The colony of New Meridian hung like a fragile jewel against the obsidian backdrop of space, a testament to human persistence on the edge of explored territory. Established 15 years earlier, it orbited Kepler 452 bits, a planet that had defied every initial planetary survival index. Humans, after all, had a particular talent for transforming the impossible into the mundane. Maria Donovan stood in the central control hub of her agricultural complex, her lean frame silhouetted against a wall of holographic displays. At 47, she carried the weathered look of someone who had survived more than most could imagine. Her right arm, a masterpiece of biomechanical engineering, constantly shifted between monitoring crop yields and managing the colony's intricate infrastructure. The prosthetic was a souvenir from her previous life, a reminder of conflicts long past. Incoming unregistered vessels, chirped Araya, the colony's central AI system. The name was an inside joke, artificially responsive intelligence assistant, that Maria had personally programmed during the colony's early days. The holographic displays flickered, revealing the approaching Zarn scout ships. Their biomechanical design was unlike anything humans had encountered, a grotesque marriage of organic technology and military precision. Each vessel looked like a living organism, with pulsing membrane-like hulls and appendages that could reconfigure mid-flight. "Analysis," Maria commanded, her voice steady. Aria's cool voice responded, "Zarn Imperium. Preliminary scans indicate advanced weaponry. Estimated technological superiority, 287% above current human colonial defense systems." A lesser colony might have panicked. New Meridian simply went to work. The colony wasn't just a settlement, it was a carefully constructed organism. Every structure, every piece of equipment had been designed with multiple purposes. The massive agricultural domes that produced food could be instantaneously transformed into defensive platforms. Irrigation systems could become high-pressure cooling mechanisms for weapon systems. Mining lasers used for excavation could be recalibrated into anti-ship weaponry within moments. Maria's background wasn't typical for an agricultural systems designer. She was a veteran of the Terran Expeditionary Force, a special operations unit that had specialized in adaptive warfare. Her last mission, a classified operation that had cost her her original arm and most of her original team, had taught her that survival was about more than superior firepower. It was about adaptability, creativity, and an unwillingness to accept defeat. "Alert the colony," she instructed Araya. "Defensive Protocol Chimera." Across New Meridian, a choreographed dance of preparation began. Colonists who appeared to be simple farmers, engineers, and researchers moved with a precision that betrayed extensive cross-training. Children were quietly moved to underground shelters. Communication networks, disguised as agricultural data relays, began encrypting and distributing defensive protocols. The Zarn would discover something fundamental about human colonies. They were never just what they appeared to be. Outside, the first Zarn scout ships began their descent. Plasma rounds started to scorch the landscape, expecting to find a helpless frontier settlement. Instead, they would encounter a meticulously prepared defensive network where every structure, every piece of equipment was designed with multiple fail-safes and combat potentials. Maria Donovan watched the incoming vessels with a calculation that was equal parts military precision and scientific curiosity. Her farm's irrigation systems were about to become something entirely different. "Well," she muttered, a slight smile crossing her weathered face, "this should be interesting." Captain Zrel of the Zarn Imperium's 73rd Adaptive Conquest Fleet had never failed a mission in his 217 standard cycles of service. His species' military doctrine was a perfect machine, tested across countless civilizations, refined through millennia of galactic domination. The initial scans of the human colony suggested a textbook conquest: minimal defensive capabilities, scattered infrastructure, technological capabilities that barely registered on the Zarn's advanced threat assessment matrices. The first wave of attack was designed to be overwhelming and precise. Biomechanical warships descended like a plague of metallic locusts, their living hulls capable of reconfiguring mid-descent to optimize attack vectors. Plasma cannons charged with enough energy to vaporize entire city blocks prepared to unleash destruction. What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for generations. The agricultural drones were the first surprise. What appeared to be simple irrigation and crop monitoring devices suddenly transformed. Their precise liquid delivery systems became high-velocity targeting mechanisms. Quantum-calibrated sensors designed to measure soil moisture now tracked incoming vessels with terrifying accuracy. Each drone became a networked weapons platform, communicating and adapting faster than any centralized military system could comprehend. Tactical anomaly. Chirp the ship's biocomputer, its organic circuits struggling to process the incoming data. Defensive systems do not match preliminary reconnaissance. Zrel watched in mounting disbelief as mining lasers, originally designed to carve through planetary rock, swiveled and recalibrated. Their precision cuts that once extracted mineral resources now sliced through Zarn ship hulls with surgical accuracy. The humans weren't just defending. They were repurposing their entire infrastructure into a living, breathing weapons system. Underground communication networks, disguised as agricultural data relays, began to weave a complex defensive web. Each colonial structure contained multiple fail-safes, each piece of equipment holding potential beyond its original design. Greenhouses became command centers. Water filtration systems transformed into chemical warfare platforms. Even the colony's waste management systems became a critical part of the defensive strategy. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the colony's chief research director, orchestrated the defense like a symphony conductor. Her background in xenobiology and adaptive systems design gave her a unique perspective. Where the Zarn saw rigid military hierarchies, she saw a flexible, organic network of potential. AI. She called to the colony's AI. Activate Distributed Defense Protocol Alpha. The colony's entire technological ecosystem shifted. Agricultural robots became mobile defense platforms. Communication satellites transformed into electronic warfare nodes. What had appeared to be a simple frontier settlement was revealing itself as a meticulously designed defensive organism. Zrel's command ship registered impossible data streams. For every Zarn vessel destroyed, 2 more defensive platforms emerge. The humans weren't just fighting. They were learning, adapting, transforming their entire environment into a weapons system that defied every known military doctrine. The Zarn had conquered civilizations that had stood for millennia. They had crushed resistance movements that spanned entire star systems, but they had never encountered a species that could weaponize creativity itself. A mining drone, its original purpose to extract rare minerals, suddenly became a precision-guided projectile. Its quantum-enhanced drilling mechanism, designed to cut through the hardest planetary cores, now targeted the most vulnerable sections of Zarn bioships. The projectile didn't just damage. It analyzed, learned, and communicated its findings to every other defensive system in the network. Impossible, Zrel muttered, watching his perfectly planned invasion dissolve into chaos. The humans were treating the invasion like an elaborate, deadly puzzle. Each Zarn attack was met not just with resistance, but with a response that systematically dismantled the alien tactical approach. Where traditional military doctrine called for centralized defense, the humans had created a distributed network where every single piece of technology could become a weapon. As the first wave of the invasion collapsed, Captain Zrel realized something fundamental had changed. This wasn't just a battle. This was a complete reimagining of conflict itself. The Zarn Imperium had come to conquer. They would leave having discovered a species that could turn the very concept of conquest on its head. Sub-Commander Rixtal was the first Zarn prisoner, and he would become the most significant intelligence failure in the Imperium's history. Dr. Marcus Chen stood in the observation room, a holographic display tracking the intricate neural patterns of their captive. He wasn't a traditional interrogator. With a background in xenopsychology, comparative cultural systems, and advanced communication theory, Chen understood that information was far more than just words exchange. The interrogation room was nothing like what Rixtol expected. Instead of cold metal and harsh lights, it resembled a comfortable research laboratory. Soft ambient lighting, ergonomic seating designed to be comfortable for both human and alien physiologies, and a subtle environmental control that mimicked the atmospheric conditions of the Zarn homeworld. "Would you like some water?" Chen asked in perfect Zarn dialect, his tone neither threatening nor submissive. Rixtol's multiple sensory stalks, typically used for threat assessment, twisted in confusion. The Zarn expected torture, intimidation, or at least aggressive questioning. This calm approach was completely outside their understanding of conflict resolution. Chen understood something fundamental about psychological warfare that the Zarn could not comprehend. True strategic communication was about creating cognitive dissonance, not breaking resistance. Each conversation was a carefully constructed algorithm. Chen would introduce seemingly innocuous information that would subtly undermine the Zarn's understanding of their own military hierarchy. He shared stories of human conflict resolution, of societies that had overcome tremendous challenges through cooperation rather than domination. The communication was multilayered. While Rixtol heard one narrative, Araya, the colony's AI, was conducting a massive data analysis. Every word, every micro-expression, every subtle bodily response was being processed, creating a comprehensive understanding of Zarn's psychological infrastructure. "Your invasion strategy assumes linear progression," Chen would often say, "but conflict is rarely a straight line." What the Zarn didn't realize was that Rixtol was becoming more than a prisoner. He was becoming a vector for psychological disruption. When Rixtol was eventually released, as Chen had always planned, he carried with him information that would create massive instability within the Zarn Imperium. Not military secrets, but something far more dangerous, alternative perspectives that could fundamentally challenge their entire societal structure. Maria Donovan watched the process with a tactical eye. Her special operations background gave her an intuitive understanding of unconventional warfare. "We're not just fighting," she told Chen. "We're rewriting their entire concept of conflict." The psychological warfare extended beyond individual interrogations. New Meridian began broadcasting carefully constructed communication signals that would reach Zarn communication networks. These weren't traditional propaganda or disinformation campaigns. They were intricate psychological provocations designed to create internal doubt. Historical records of human conflicts were strategically shared, not to glorify war, but to demonstrate humanity's capacity for both tremendous violence and remarkable reconciliation. Stories of civilizations that had transformed from bitter enemies to collaborative partners were woven into the transmissions. AI analyzed and adapted these communications in real time. The AI could detect subtle shifts in Zarn communication patterns, adjusting the psychological approach with millisecond precision. Where traditional military intelligence might take months to understand an enemy's communication patterns, AI could do so in moments. Sub-Commander Rixtol became just the first of many Zarn soldiers who would return to their forces fundamentally changed. Each carried not just information, but a virus of perspective that was far more dangerous than any physical weapon. The Zarn had come expecting a straightforward conquest. Instead, they found themselves engaged in a conflict where the primary battlefield was perception itself. Every interaction, every moment of contact became a potential point of strategic manipulation. "Conflict is communication," Chen would often say, "and we're fluent in every dialect." As the psychological campaign intensified, the Zarn discovered something terrifying. The humans weren't just fighting a war. They were conducting a comprehensive deconstruction of the Imperium's entire understanding of conflict, resistance, and interspecies interaction. The real invasion had just begun, and its weapons were far more sophisticated than plasma cannons or advanced weaponry. They were ideas, flexible, adaptive, and utterly uncontainable. The concept was deceptively simple, yet revolutionary. What if every piece of technology could think, adapt, and defend? Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood in the central nexus of New Meridian's technological infrastructure, surrounded by holographic displays that pulsed with living data streams. Her latest creation, the Adaptive Warfare Algorithm, AODA, was about to change everything the galaxy understood about technological defense. Traditional military systems relied on centralized command structures. A single point of failure could collapse entire defensive networks. Humans, with their inherent distrust of centralized control, had developed something entirely different. Araya, the colony's AI, was more than just a computer system. It was a distributed intelligence that treated the entire colony as a single living organism. Every agricultural drone, every communication relay, every piece of infrastructure became a potential node in a massive adaptive defense network. Initialization sequence, Rodriguez muttered, her fingers dancing across quantum interfaces that seemed to breathe with their own intelligence. The first wave of the AODA's deployment was almost poetic in its complexity. Mining robots that once extracted rare minerals now became mobile sensor platforms. Hydroponic systems transformed into chemical analysis units. Even the colony's waste management infrastructure became a critical intelligence-gathering network. What made the system truly revolutionary was its ability to learn and adapt in real time. Traditional AI systems followed predetermined algorithms. The AODA was different. It treated each incoming threat as a unique puzzle to be solved, with every colony system capable of instant reconfiguration. A Zarn reconnaissance drone approaching the colony would find itself caught in a web of technological deception. Agricultural sensors would generate false thermal signatures. Communication relays would create phantom network traffic. What appeared to be a simple farming complex would suddenly become an impossible-to-map technological labyrinth. Maria Donovan watched the system's development with a tactical eye. Her special operations background had taught her that the best defense was never about overwhelming force, but about making yourself fundamentally unreadable. "We're not just defending," she told Rodriguez. "We're creating uncertainty as a weapon." The distributed network extended far beyond New Meridian. Unbeknownst to the Zarn, human colonies across multiple star systems had been developing similar adaptive technologies. Each colony was a node, each system a potential point of resistance. When one colony developed a new defensive technique, it could be shared and adapted almost instantaneously. Araya's communication protocols were a masterpiece of technological innovation. Traditional encryption was static. Araya's communication method was a living, breathing entity that could change its fundamental communication structure faster than an enemy could analyze it. "Incoming threat vector," Araya announced, its voice neither mechanical nor entirely human. Adaptive response. Sequence Chimera 7. The colony's entire technological ecosystem shifted. What had appeared to be a simple irrigation system became a complex sensor network. Greenhouse environmental controls transformed into electronic warfare platforms. A waste processing unit could suddenly become a sophisticated signal jamming station. Rodriguez understood something fundamental about technological defense that most military strategists missed. Complexity was not about adding more systems, but about making existing systems more adaptable. Each technological component was designed with multiple potential purposes. A drone designed to monitor crop health could, within milliseconds, become a precision targeting system. A communication relay could transform into a sophisticated electronic countermeasure platform. The Zarn invasion force was about to discover that they weren't fighting a traditional military. They were attempting to conquer a living, thinking technological ecosystem that could reshape itself faster than any traditional military doctrine could comprehend. "They came expecting a colony," Maria said, a slight smile crossing her face. "They're going to find a nightmare." Araya's response was characteristic in its clinical precision. Threat assessment complete. Probability of successful invasion, 0.37%. The distributed network was more than a defensive system. It was a fundamental reimagining of how technology could interact with threat, with environment, with the very concept of survival itself. Humanity had discovered something profound. In a universe of rigid systems, true power lay in adaptability. The human approach to technology was fundamentally different from the Zarn. Where the alien civilization saw technology as a static tool, humans treated it as a living, evolving organism. Dr. Elena Rodriguez began developing what would later be called adaptive warfare algorithms, software that could learn, predict, and counter alien tactics in real time. Zarn ships found themselves fighting against an enemy that could predict their movements before they made them, with every human system capable of instant reconfiguration and repurposing. The moment of true psychological collapse came unexpectedly, in a sequence of events that would be studied by military strategists for generations. Captain Zrel watched as his carefully constructed invasion plan disintegrated into a nightmare of recursive failure. The human response was nothing short of temporal warfare. They weren't just fighting the current moment, but systematically dismantling every potential future the Zarn could imagine. Communication intercepts revealed something far more terrifying than any physical weapon. The humans weren't just resisting. They were conducting a comprehensive deconstruction of the Zarn Imperium's entire philosophical and military infrastructure. Sub-Commander Rixtal's return had been the first crack in the Zarn's psychological armor. The prisoner, now released, carried with him something far more dangerous than military secrets. He carried alternative perspectives that challenged the fundamental assumptions of Zarn society. Dr. Marcus Chen had been precise in his psychological manipulation. Each conversation with Rixtal was a carefully constructed algorithm designed to create profound cognitive dissonance. The humans shared stories of conflict resolution, of societies that had transformed from bitter enemies to collaborative partners. They presented historical records that demonstrated humanity's capacity for both tremendous violence and remarkable reconciliation. The Zarn discovered that humans could weaponize information in ways that transcended traditional military doctrine. Araya, the colony's eye, began broadcasting communications that were simultaneously tactical disruption and philosophical provocation. Each transmission was a multi-layered communication designed to create internal doubt within the Zarn command structure. Historical human conflicts were reframed not as stories of victory, but as complex narratives of adaptation and transformation. Tactical coordinator Vexnar found himself experiencing something unprecedented in Zarn military history: genuine psychological uncertainty. The humans had discovered the ultimate weapon, the ability to make an enemy question its own fundamental beliefs. Every Zarn tactical approach was anticipated. Every strategic movement was already 3 conceptual steps ahead of its execution. What had begun as a straightforward invasion had transformed into a comprehensive dismantling of the Zarn's entire understanding of conflict. Maria Donovan oversaw the psychological campaign with the precision of a surgeon. Her special operations background had taught her that the most effective warfare was never about physical destruction, but about making the enemy fundamentally uncertain of their own capabilities. "We're not just defending," she told Chen. "We're rewriting their entire concept of conflict." The distributed network of human colonies began to synchronize their response in ways that defied traditional military understanding. Each colony became a node in a living, breathing tactical ecosystem. Information, defensive strategies, psychological insights, all were shared and adapted with millisecond precision. KARI, the Quantum Adaptive Response Interface, took psychological warfare to unprecedented levels. It didn't just analyze Zarn communication protocols. It began to predict and manipulate them at a fundamental level. Each incoming communication became an opportunity for strategic manipulation. Zarn ships found themselves caught in an impossible scenario. Their most secure communication networks became rivers of strategic confusion. Tactical data streams were transformed into elaborate misdirection systems. What appeared to be standard military communications became intricate psychological provocations. Incoming threat vector, ARIA would announce, its voice a perfect blend of clinical precision and subtle adaptive intelligence. Probability of successful invasion, approaching 0. The breakdown was not just tactical. It was philosophical. The Zarn had conquered civilizations that had stood for millennia. They had crushed resistance movements that spanned entire star systems, but they had never encountered a species that could weaponize uncertainty itself. Captain Zrell's tactical displays became a nightmare of recursive failure. Each strategic approach was met with a response that was simultaneously defensive and offensive, physical and psychological, immediate and predictive. The humans weren't just fighting a war. They were conducting a comprehensive deconstruction of the Zarn Imperium's entire understanding of conflict. Strategic retreats became impossible. Every Zarn movement was not just anticipated, but preemptively neutralized through a combination of technological innovation and psychological manipulation. As the psychological campaign intensified, the Zarn discovered something terrifying. They were fighting an enemy that didn't just resist conquest. They were fighting a species that could transform the very concept of conflict itself. Humanity had discovered something profound. In a universe of rigid systems, true power lay in the ability to become something entirely unexpected. The final stage of the conflict was less a battle and more a comprehensive deconstruction of the Zarn Imperium's entire existential framework. Admiral Krelvax stood on the bridge of the Imperium's most advanced command vessel, the Eternal Dominance, watching in real time as everything his civilization understood about conquest dissolved into chaos. What had begun as a simple invasion of a frontier human colony had transformed into a complete systemic collapse of Zarn military doctrine. The humans had weaponized something far more dangerous than plasma cannons or quantum disruptors. They had weaponized perspective itself. Maria Donovan orchestrated the final phase of the resistance from New Meridian's Central Command, her biomechanical arm interfacing directly with QARI, the Quantum Adaptive Response Interface that had become the central nervous system of human defensive capabilities. Her special operations background had prepared her for unconventional warfare, but this went beyond anything she could have imagined. "Initiate distributed resonance protocol," she commanded, her voice steady. Across multiple star systems, human colonies that had appeared isolated revealed themselves as a complex, living network. Each colony was a node, each technological system a potential point of strategic intervention. The Zarn discovered that what they had considered random frontier settlements were actually meticulously prepared defensive ecosystems. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's adaptive warfare algorithms reached their ultimate expression. The technological systems developed during the invasion weren't just defensive, they were transformative. Each Zarn tactical approach was not just anticipated but systematically deconstructed and repurposed. The break came not with a massive explosion, but with a series of cascading information systems that dismantled the Zarn's entire communication and command infrastructure. Araraya began broadcasting a series of communications that were simultaneously tactical disruption and philosophical provocation. Historical records, translated and contextualized for Zarn understanding, demonstrated humanity's capacity for both tremendous violence and remarkable reconciliation. Each transmission was a multi-layered communication designed to create profound cognitive dissonance within the Zarn command structure. Tactical Coordinator Vexnar experienced something unprecedented in Zarn military history: genuine existential uncertainty. The human response defied every known military doctrine. Where traditional resistance movements would concentrate their forces, humans had created a distributed network that was simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. Each technological component was designed with multiple potential purposes. A communication relay could become an electronic warfare platform in milliseconds. An agricultural drone could transform into a precision targeting system, faster than the Zarn could recalibrate their defensive systems. "They're not just fighting," Admiral Krelvax muttered in disbelief. "They're reimagining the entire concept of conflict." Dr. Marcus Chen's psychological warfare reached its apex. The prisoners released during earlier stages of the conflict carried something far more dangerous than military secrets. They carried alternative perspectives that challenged the fundamental assumptions of Zarn society. Each conversation, each strategic communication, was a carefully constructed algorithm designed to create profound cognitive dissonance. The distributed network of human colonies synchronized their response with a speed and complexity that defied traditional military understanding. Information, defensive strategies, psychological insights, all were shared and adapted with millisecond precision. What appeared to be isolated settlements revealed themselves as a living, breathing tactical ecosystem. KRA's predictive capabilities reached terrifying levels of sophistication. It didn't just analyze Zarn communication protocols, it could predict and manipulate them at a fundamental level. Each incoming communication became an opportunity for strategic intervention. Each tactical approach was already 3 conceptual steps ahead of its execution. The final blow was not a physical attack, but a comprehensive dismantling of the Zarn Imperium's entire philosophical and military infrastructure. Maria Donovan watched the system's ultimate deployment with a mixture of professional detachment and profound understanding. "We're not just defending," she had told her team earlier. "We're demonstrating an entirely new approach to conflict resolution." As the Zarn command structure began to collapse, it became clear that this was more than a military engagement. This was a fundamental reimagining of how intelligent species could interact, resolve conflicts, and understand each other. The invasion that was supposed to crush a frontier human colony had instead exposed the fundamental limitations of the Zarn Imperium's rigid, hierarchical approach to existence. Humanity had discovered something profound. In a universe of rigid systems, true power lay in the ability to adapt, to transform, to see potential where others saw only limitation. In the aftermath, the Galactic Concordance realized that humanity represented something entirely new, a species that didn't just adapt to challenges, but transformed them into opportunities. The Zarn Imperium was more than defeated. It was comprehensively deconstructed by an enemy that viewed conflict as a complex, creative problem to be solved. Humanity had not just survived. They had redefined the very concept of strategic engagement. The galaxy would never be the same.